Evening, you all. Welcome to our final lockdown live chat for 2020. Quite crazy. We've come this far, Alec, all the way in June, and now here we are, middle of December.
Yo, it is crazy, man. Crazy.
Nuts. But we thought it'd be quite a nice way to kind of tie a bow up on this whole year, so to speak, and do a little bit of our own personal review of 2020, a year of SA Extreme, if you will. So, yeah, kind of just giving you guys a breakdown of what's going to be happening. We're going to kick it off chronologically. All the releases that came out over the year, starting from February. And yeah, we'll just bounce it back. Myself and Alec will both give a rating out of 5, and we will put that together to give a final tally of 10. And we'll just keep on going until we get to where we are now in December 2020. So, yeah, pretty much with that in mind, that being said, let's give a few little honorable mentions. As I said, we did start off in February, but we should mention Treehouse Burning Floating Donuts. That came out 17th of January. And the Devil Speak Violently Leading the Blind single came out also 20th of January. So make sure to grab those. But yeah, getting into the meat and potatoes. The first release that we're going to be reviewing today is Relentless Killing Motivation from Cape Town's own The Fallen Prophets. That was released 29th of February by MMD Black. And yeah, pretty much I think I will kick this off. As I kind of had the connection with the guys, and they were like, let's do this album on your label. So pretty much it's an 11-track album. Kicks off with an intro that was done by a friend, Karen Grieve of Sinewave Studios. It's basically a concept album that dives into the slow depravity into like psychosis by Andrew Manor, I believe. Yeah, so track 1 kind of acts as an intro, and then it's all guns blazing with the opening single, which is Relentless Killing Motivation. Pretty much gives you an idea on the production levels across the board with guitars. Peter's vocals are searing, as well as Francois' high end. And yeah, it pretty much keeps the flow going across the next couple of tracks. Wrong Turn, Mutilation of Flesh kind of showcases that low guttural mixed with high, like, searing vocals with Francois. And yeah, some really catchy hooks at the end of that track. That's probably one of my more standouts. Their single was Nothing to Kill, Nothing to Feed On, and that was pretty much probably the best indicative track in a way of explaining what their style was as far as the new time changes goes. So yeah, the moving along, we'll just jump across because the next couple of tracks kind of go from that like hook and rage like elements that the first 6 tracks had, and then it kind of goes into that death and thirst fury motive. But then I guess kind of to kind of ease it off, they kind of even add a little bit of like a melodic riff element towards the end of Killing Spree before it goes completely bananas. So yeah, then the bonus track was Slaughtered, which is an instrumental track which I've seen work live many times. And yeah, pretty much in my opinion, like as far as artwork goes, definitely one of the more like out there pieces, but it works with the theme, I guess, of the album. And I mean, I like more of the tracks than I dislike the tracks, so I'm gonna give this a solid 4 out of 5. Going, yeah, 4 out of 5. That's it.
Sick. Yeah, so I'll give my score quickly, just so that we group them together, and then I'll give my motivation. I'm gonna give them 4.5. So like that's stellar. Like they've nailed this release, and you know that means they're getting 8.5 out of 10 from both of us, which is like seriously good job, guys.
8.5.
Yeah, so positives. Song has a killer intro. I didn't know the context, but Lyle's given that. The album is brutal. It's unrelenting. the composition is brilliant, and I thoroughly enjoyed like basically every track on the album. But for me, like my favorite track was the title track, and like for it to come in straight after the intro, it made me want to listen to more of the album. You know, it wasn't a case of like, oh, I have to do this review now, so let me just listen to song after song. Like, I didn't have to skip any songs. I didn't skip any sections. It was just like I listened to the full album because it was a pleasure to do so. To state the negative, though, because there's always a negative, in my opinion, although the album art does match the theme, stylistically, it's not really correct for a release of this brutality. So like the art is very good and it's a good piece of artwork, but for the context of a band like the Fallen Prophets, it's a bit cuck, you know? It doesn't show that brutality, and I much prefer the artwork they have on their new EP as well as on Slaughtered at the Altar. You know, like the new artwork for Slaughtered at the Altar, obviously. Yeah, we won't get into the old artwork. That's probably a sore point. But yeah, so cool. Great job, guys. Like solid 8.5 out of 10. That's killer.
Rocking it. So moving ahead, we're now jumping all the way to the end of March. 26th of March, it was Hilliker with their new album, Ancestral Communication. This was an interesting album because obviously it came right on the cuff of a lockdown and they had tours and everything planned. So a lot of stuff didn't really work out. But this was actually the first album where Daniel Lowe, who was the lead guitarist, actually took lead vocal stylings. And even more so, this was the first album that they actually brought on Dolph to actually do live drums. So right off the bat, I was intrigued, and yeah, I couldn't wait to hear this. So yeah, kicking the album off, it pretty much started with an intro, nice, weird, ominous, looming sounds, and the first track, Scavenger Flesh, kind of gives you the first like audio taste of what Dan actually is going to be bringing vocally as far as the band goes, and I'm already well impressed with the production level at this point. Then, yeah, moving ahead, the next three tracks being Sadistic, Euphoria, Ancestral Communication, the title track, and Emptied Hollow, those three tracks pretty much give you the meat and potatoes of where the band actually stylistically is trying to go with their sound now, and it's killer. It's lots of thrash hooks, a lot of like almost carcass-like vocals. It's cool. It's great. It's got that low, dense, like double bass, thrashy drum sound. It's good. I mean, the tracks towards the end being like Imitate, Lobotomize, Sith, that kind of showcases more the drumming and Dan's like guitar work also. So, I mean, you kind of put that all together with their single, which is kind of a bold move, ending the album on your title, like the main track. But like Be the Wolf, Kill the Lamb, it's probably, as far as a mid-tempo track, you know it's going to get every crowd mosh pit going. It's got all the great hooks, and yeah, it really rounds off the album well. So as far as like a first offering with Dan, their second official album, I'm actually going to give this album also a solid 4 out of 5. So, yeah.
Sick. Cool. I'll start also with my rating. We'll hit a 3.5, which is still, it's a 70%, which is a very good mark.
Yeah.
So yeah, you mentioned that it started off with quite a weird intro. It sounded like they were going for like a stringed, almost orchestral feel. And you know me, I love my epic symphonic stuff, which is why basically every band I'm in incorporates the orchestral feel. And like, to be a little harsh, the VSTs or the virtual instruments that they used for that weren't of the quality that you would expect for an intro. So like, it was eerie, but I could hear that it wasn't like violin. I could hear that it had that like weird digital effect to it. And I mean, maybe that's what they went for, but I don't think necessarily that was the case. I know that it's Dan's first attempt at vocals, and I know that he'll improve. I did feel it, in terms of production, was a little lackluster in terms vocally. It might just be a case of learning with recording and whatnot, and like the fact that you don't record one take, you record multiple layers and you mix those and blend those and to make like a hectic release. The best way I could sort of describe it is like, I love Children of Bodom's music, but I hate Alexi's voice, right? I don't quite hate Dan's voice, but the music in this is so good. The vocals comparatively are lackluster. But yeah, musically it's been well produced. I think Dan did do the production, right? Or
yes.
Yeah. So like it's good production, you know, like no complaint there. My favorite track is that Sentient Split. It has that almost atmospheric black metal feeling intro. And Lobotomized also has that. And I really like the fact that it breaks the mold of the rest of the album, which is like straight up thrashy, deathy vibes, right? I feel that a lot of bands have a sound and then they're too scared to experiment, you know? And like I'm in one of them. I'm playing Forsaking Fate, and like basically everything's at 140. So like, you know, like I understand, like, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's your vibe, but I really like the fact that they introduced some sort of different elements into their music. So yeah, I gave them 3.5, which means they got
7.5, a solid B+. 7.5 to the Thrash guys. Nice one, and we can't wait to hear more. So, yeah, we're going to move to one day after this release, and we're jumping all the way to Durban with Sorgsykken's single, Hatet. Came out on the 27th of March. So, yeah, how about you kick this off, Alec?
Yeah, so, yeah, I really liked Sorgsykken's release, Hatet. The production is great, but they're not Black and Death. They're like atmospheric black metal. So that's cool. It's a great production for an atmospheric black metal band. And I mean, we've seen some local atmospheric black metal bands getting signed to major labels with far worse production. So yeah, they've really done a good job on this track. I do also really like the layers of like the acoustic guitars. And I know when we spoke to them, it was like a massive undertaking to try get those recordings right, because who's mad enough to try record acoustic guitars at home? So all those things considered. Actually, no, wait. I'll wait until you've given your spiel to give my score.
Fine. Well, yeah, basically 3.5 minutes. It's very tough to kind of get a vibe, but I mean, if you want a cold, dissonant type production, which is what they kind of were going for, that lo-fi sound, they achieved it. The acoustic guitar is amazing. I love the tremolo picking. It really does have an atmospheric black metal feel. I would say that that's similar to a band like Spectral Realm, another local band. So yeah, obviously the acoustic guitar kind of adds a little bit of a new dimension to it. So yeah, I'm totally down with them. And obviously in a bubble, it's hard to kind of judge it like more broadly. But I mean, I think I'm going to give this rating 3.5 for a first attempt with no other prior info. 3.5.
Sick. Like I said, I think this was like an amazing attempt at an atmospheric black metal track. So I'm going to judge it in that sort of caliber, and taking that in mind, I think a 4 is good from my point. So that means they get a solid 7.5 out of 10, which is killer.
Some Nordic love for the Durban boys. Nice one, guys. Awesome, awesome. Well, yeah, now we're going to be jumping all the way over to Mpumalanga. We're going all the way to Middelburg. We're going to the filthy Bleeding Spawn guys with their EP Pariah Attestant, which came out 11th of April. So, yeah, obviously, like at first listen, you hear the weird synthetic, like ominous, brutal intro with like the chomping of the bits, and you get that feel immediately of what the cover kind of is trying to give you, that portrayal. And then obviously, like going further into Mutant Genetic X, it just blisters into the most brutal programmed drums you've ever heard. Now, obviously, some people would consider that to be ridiculous, but I mean, we're living in a time now where bands like Anal Nathrak or Infant Annihilator are literally doing that in a way to push the envelope. And knowing the way that Dom and the whole crew of Bleeding Spawn have been, I kind of feel like the production on this and the way that they've laid out the tracks still kind of has that ethos of what brought them to the death grind game. But it's kind of, I don't want to call it a flex, but it's kind of like a, you know, it's showing a little bit of a dichotomy of how brutal they can be if they were trying to show how brutal they could be. And I feel like Control Human Delete being their main single from the 3-track EP, it pretty much kind of signifies the sound that they're going for leading forward. You can hear a lot of evolution in the low end when it comes to Dom's backing vocals also. Obviously, now we wait and see how they pull off this new brutal material live. So obviously, again, 3 tracks. I'm used to hearing a lot more music from them to get a wider array of ideas, but I really like this. And yeah, I'm going to give it a solid 3.5 out of 5.
Sick. I'll start off with my rating straight off the bat. I'm going to give them a 3, and we'll get into it. So that means, I mean, they're getting a 6.5 out of 10. Firstly, I must compliment them though, because the production on this is a lot better than their album. Like, they've come leaps and bounds from their full-length album. I was a little disappointed at this release. I couldn't find it on Spotify, but maybe I wasn't looking correctly, but I went through the Slam Worldwide stream of it. Vocally, I mean, it's insane. It's what you'd expect from a band that labels themselves as brutal death. Like, a whole bunch of like incomprehensible vocals. The riffs are heavy as anything. Where, like, and I program drums all the time on all my releases, and where I can't get behind them is the drums. It made me think of those sprinklers that move and water the garden. Like, their drummer is one of the most insane drummers in this country. He's like one of the, like, probably in the top 5 drummers in this country. And I know that it's difficult to program. Well, I know it's difficult to record like live drums or like even electric drums, but like at least do something that's playable. And the reason, and maybe you can play it, but a lot of the bass was so fast that it actually changed pitch. You know, it was like playing a different note. So yeah, it had that like sort of sprinkler effect, which, I mean, yeah, Infinite Annihilator, you mentioned, they do that as well. But like, I mean, Infinite Annihilator is basically the whole band is programmed except for the vocalist. which at least Bleeding Spawn isn't. You know, they still got their super crunchy riffs. It's not a bad release by any stretch of the imagination, and I think it actually gets to where they want to go. You know, like they're nailing their sound. But for me, I would have liked more natural drums, at least on the double bass side of things.
So, your score with a solid 3, and what was mine? 3 and like a 3.5. So yeah, 6.5 out of 10 for 3 tracks that bring the brutality. Definitely the most brutal band in this country, hands down.
Yeah.
So we're going to be jumping a little bit across. We're going from Mpumalanga all the way to PE with a full-length album brought to you by Monolith, The Lord Conspirator, which came out on the 28th of April, I believe. 28th of April. So, yeah, maybe, Alec, you want to kick us off with this one?
So, straight off the bat, I've performed with these guys twice. They make great use of all 3 vocalists, and you can actually hear it in the album. It's not like a blend of the same sounding guy. So they all have their strengths, and they utilize them perfectly in this album. It's avant-garde death metal, which means it's basically death metal with the occasional black metal influence and death doom feel. You could kind of describe it as death metal meets atmospheric black metal meets funeral doom, which means it's really textured music. You know, there's tons of guitar harmonies, there's tons of really little intricate things that they add in, lots of great layers. My favorite track is Black Earth's Gate. That intro riff is super killer. Yeah, it also has like, it's not overproduced. It's got like that old school production. Like you can hear that Chris took it through like an old school sort of rig in terms of mixing and mastering. And it really gives it that unique, authentic, old school death metal feel. I'll wait until the end to give my score.
Awesome. Well, I mean, basically, like if you're kicking off like the album, it's an 8-track release. The Lord Conspirator is the first track, title track. Starts off with a sick drum rhythm, obviously kind of just propels the music when the guitar layering starts to come in. You hear the different ranges of vocals that come from Andy and Chris on the low ends. You just hear all the sick organic texturing in the drumming and the low end, and that kind of just continues across all the tracks. Even tracks like The Descent gives more of a somber feel compared to another track like Nightfall, which is a little bit more high octane. But I mean, adding those little Arabic elements into it, those weird signature, those odd time signature changes, and like you say, a lot of harmonic, and I wouldn't say a melodic riffs, but kind of like, you know, like just a more esoteric type sounding guitar riff. And obviously it's just propelled by this like organic feel to how the whole album feels as a whole. And then obviously it ends on Saturn, which is kind of a little bit more up-tempo, mid-tempo type track, but you know, low gutturals mixed with that like that polarity of like the high like dissonant guitars. It's kind of gives it a very weird melancholic feel. So yeah, all that in mind, it blew me away. Obviously this is a band that's been doing this for quite a few years. They've gone through a few changes, and I really feel like they've kind of come into their own in terms of what the sound is that they're moving forward with also. So considering the big jump of how it was from 2 years ago to how it is now, I'm actually going to give it 4 out of 5.
I'm giving it 4 out of 5 as well, so they're hitting a solid 8. So congrats, guys. 8 out of 10
Congrats,
is
guys.
flipping amazing.
Yeah, PE represent. PE knows how to bring it. We can't wait to hear what they come up with in the future. So, yeah. Okay, so we're coming back to, I guess, where we could say parts unknown, but technically it's Cape Town. We're going a little bit doomy with actually the Meterbuches Eye of Future, Eye of Past Doom EP. So yeah, I guess kind of starting off, there's not really a lot known about the guy, except for the fact that this was like a DIY project. Some of the analog recordings were done at Milestone Studios, and technically it's a 7-track EP, but with 2 bonus tracks. So I'm going to look at it as the 5 new tracks that came out, and not the two reissues that were done. And yeah, as I said, kind of a doom death hybrid, very lo-fi, kind of has that cavernous feel with the final production. Most of the tracks kind of have a bit of a cross between going really slow and then really propelling fast, and I guess tracks like Most Evil and Seventh Day kind of signify that slow, dirgy doom feel the most. I Accuse You and We Are Satan are probably the most old school death metal feeling. Even has a little bit of a bass solo in the one track. But yeah, it's funny because when I heard these 5 tracks, I was obviously, I gravitated towards them, but then I heard the 2 reissued tracks of the 2 tracks that were done a year ago prior, that being As I Die and I Archfiend. And I actually preferred the 2 singles that came out. So I'm obviously hopeful with the project. I'd like to see what they're going to bring in the near future. Obviously, production is very lo-fi, and obviously putting it next to some of the talent that we've had already reviewed, it's very hard for me not to kind of look at those 2 previous singles and wonder whether or not he should have maintained a little bit more of that traditional death metal feel rather than the doom feel. So actually, like that being said, with this release, I'm actually going to be giving it 2.5 out of 5, with the hope of it becoming a quick, easy A+ with a few little tweaks.
No, 100%. So yeah, I'll start off with my rating. So I give it a 3, so that takes us to a 5.5. So it's more than 50%, so it still passes. It's not bad at all. So from my side, it has that raw. You mentioned doom. For me, it's more like a raw blackened death meets funeral doom sort of vibe. It does have like some crazy heavy vocals, and if you look at the picture of Jethro, you would never assume that that's the guy that's doing those vocals. Nothing Left Then Death. Nothing Left Then Death is a bit like lo-fi in the beginning, like a little bit too lo-fi for me. It's probably the weakest song in the album, and it's probably a little bit vocally weak for me as well. I need to point out that it's super edgy lyrically, like super edgy, but I have to give him +1 for the fact that he made an effort to make his lyrics rhyme. I'm like one of these people that, like, I like interesting patterns, but if you can't come up with interesting patterns, please just add some rhyming elements. You're not like writing a story, you're writing a piece of poetry that's like being growled, you know? So yeah, from my side, he gets +1 because of the fact that his lyrics rhyme. So yeah, that's basically all I have to say about this release. Yeah, a little bit edgy, a little bit lo-fi, but that was the intention, and that's what he achieved.
Yeah, solid 5.5. Like big ups to Jethro. I mean, it's a do-it-yourself project of passion. So yeah, we'll see what comes up with in the future. So yeah, I think you're going to be excluded from this review because we're actually going to be talking about the single from Hilliker, which
Let
came
me
out on the 20th. Yes,
let me just say one thing before we go
yes.
two balls into the wall. I did write up some stuff, and I said, you know, this is a re-release. It's a remaster of a track from an EP that I did. It was my favorite track on the EP, which I mean isn't that hard because I wrote the EP in like 3 days. So it's my favorite track from the EP. It does have some cool riffs in it, but in terms of like slam style stuff, it's more like death metal vocals, like and going forward with the sort of Hilliker stuff. Chatting to Alan, who actually produced this track, he's given me some good advice on like, because I've got like quite a loud scream, so he's like, well, just put that volume down and get your face up into that mic and like try a whole bunch of different techniques. And yeah, so that's basically what's going to happen going forward. But yeah, I won't give a review because it's my own shit, so that would be stupid. But go
So
for it.
what I will is say the reason, the added reason to actually review this is because it does feature your now wife. At the time, Chelsea Miller was a Murloc Bentley, Merlot
Close enough.
Bentley, yeah,
Mulock Bentley.
Muloc, but now Larson. Anyway, this basically featured her on guest vocals. Now, as you did mention, it does offer a little bit of the slam element, especially towards the end with the breeze and the detuned guitar and the slow like double bass build up. But for the most part, it is more a traditional death metal track with a weird, almost galloping type drum rhythm. But that being said, it's nice to be able to sometimes hear the lyrics in turn of audibly actually knowing the words without having to read it. So it was kind of compounded by the fact that you guys did in fact do a lyric video that was put out on Slam Worldwide. So I mean, I know the lyrics well. I know all the parts well. When I first heard it, I thought, "Wow, this has something to it." But obviously, putting it up compared to the previous like EP that you guys did, the demo-ish version, leaps and bounds. But now based upon the fact that it is only one track, I'm going to say I love it. I dig it. I think it's got a lot of like the project has a lot of potential, and Chelsea kills it. But as far as it goes with the minimal cover, that I know you could do like a lot better than a piece of flesh, a piece of steak. I'm going to give it a solid 3.5 out of 5. So we could double that and give it 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Like we've said,
Awesome.
that's a great score for any band. So yeah, I'm happy.
So, okay, so we're going to be moving across the pond here. Actually, we thought we'd include just one or two other bands that have made a little bit of an impact on the SA metal scene, and that would be Nuclear Winter from Zimbabwe. He did his EP called Stormscape, and that was released 15th of July. So, yeah, Alec, what are your thoughts on that?
Dude, this guy blows my mind how much talent he has. Like, it's an amazing production. It's great melodic death metal with like there's some like weird synthy stuff that's sort of reminiscent of industrial metal. Um, Harsh vocals are amazing. The clean vocals blow my mind. It's one dude and his 7-string Schecter and you know his home recording and tons of time and tons of love poured into it. Yeah, like it's probably, without being biased, one of my favorite releases internationally, you know. So yeah, I'll give my score now for a change. I'm going to give this a solid 5. 5 out of 5. It's basically flawless to me. Like, I could nitpick, but I'm not going to.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to kick it off because you went so high. My number was literally close to that. It was 4.5 out of 5. So that's a solid 9.5 for Stormscape. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like 4 tracks. If you include the 5th bonus track being a cover by Toto, which obviously Africa has a little bit of a personal connection with us over here in South Africa. But yeah, if you had to remove that, even looking at each of those 4 individual tracks, Hearts of Stone and The Wide Water, I mean, the low-end production on the drums with those weird little atmospheric industrial pads and those high-end vocals. Even if you think of a track like The Northern Winds, which is by far the crunchiest track, it completely is balanced out. Those heavy guitars are balanced out completely with those beautiful, like, clean vocals that Gary does on that. So, yeah, I mean, and obviously ending off the EP on a Frank Sinatra cover of New York, which is class, just pure class. I mean, showcasing his more baritone voice and the production across the board. The fact that this is all done by one guy, it's like Zimbabwe's own Devin Townsend. It's honestly, like, it's quite awe-inspiring. So, yeah, I'm giving it 4.5. You're giving it a solid 5. 9.5. Big ups to Gary. That's well-deserved. We can't wait to hear more from you. So, wow. Yeah, so, okay, so we're pulling things down. At this point now, we're at the middle of July. So, 17th of July / the 30th of October, we had the Chaos Doctrine single, Father Gregory, which also featured Dether Dementia Grail, Growl. So yeah, I guess maybe I'll just kick this off. First time I heard the single, I was like hooked. It's got also that slow, dreary type of doom tone, but it's got that like banging type of very raw machine type drumming, but with that organic feel behind it. So it feels literally like a Terminator is playing the machine, like playing the drums. So that mixed with probably the best vocals I've actually heard coming from Dr. D. I mean, honestly, in a bubble, again, this is a band that I always look forward to hearing new material from. This is a little bit different. They obviously added a Russian influence by having Dementor part of it, adding the spoken word in Russian. But yeah, I love this track. I mean, I would love to hear a little bit more from the guys moving forward. I'm sure they have a lot of releases coming. So yeah, I can't really fault this. But yeah, just from the yearning of wanting to hear more, I'm going to give this 4 out of 5.
Sweet. You've got the same score as me, so 4 out of 5. That means they're sitting on a solid 8 out of 10, which is like super killer. Yeah, it's atmospheric and big. I didn't really enjoy the spoken word, but I liked it when in the Russian version, because that sort of had that. It sounded more ominous, whereas the English version was not quite as cool in the spoken word part. But yeah, the production has come forward leaps and bounds from their first album. Alex Surridge did such a good job on this. My namesake. One thing I could also say is the music video for this is killer, like award-winning music video. Like, it needs to get like that sort of level of recognition. So they did a really great job on their music video. And the solo in the song is also super cool, Alec nailed it. And yeah, solid song, guys.
Yeah, can't fault it. Solid 8 out of 10. That's a solid A. Well deserving, and we can't wait to hear more from the machine from Joburg. So yeah, we're gonna still keep it out in, I guess, Joburg related, but we're going a little bit more black metal, atmospheric vibes. Released 20th of July, it's Spectral Realms' full-length album, Spectral Witch of Hex River. And maybe you want to kick us off here.
Yeah, definitely. These guys, I'm good friends with them, but I won't let that get in the way of impartial judgment. It's technical melodic black metal at its like sort of finest, you know, composition. It's amazing. Musicianship is incredible. Lyrically, I mean, I've done guest vocals for them live, and when they hand you a lyric book of like 18 pages for 6 songs, you know that there's a lot of love going into like crafting their lore. They're the kind of band that doesn't really repeat, even in sections that musically repeat. They don't really repeat lyrics because they're telling a story. So yeah, lyrically amazing. Like I said, the composition is spot on. The shit needs to be on Spotify, but you know they're rocking the Bandcamp vibe for now, and I mean that's their choice. They obviously feel that maybe streaming might hurt sales. I mean, they have their motivations, but yeah, like it needs to get onto Spotify so that it can go into playlists and whatnot. In my mind, they have the best album art by far, but that's might be because I know who did it, and Onki always nails that shit. You know, shout out to Onki from Tomb Kick in Indonesia. My favorite track on the album is Petals Reflecting Moonlight, which is about a sadistic woman that tests her male suitors by trying to get them to murder cats and whatnot. You know, because that's as one does.
Story.
Yeah, it's a love story.
It's a love song.
One thing I can say is I don't feel like their production improved from their previous album. I mean, this is a couple years, I think it's like 5 years since they released their first album, and production-wise, it's not as good as their previous album. It's musically like a lot more chaotic, and when you have something like that, you really need to rely on crisp clarity in your production. Otherwise, it can end up sounding exactly that, chaotic. So while everything is like sounds like I'm giving them massive compliments, their production, I feel, could do with a little bit of work for this album. So I'll give them a 4 out of 5. Like, if the production was spot on, it would be 5, you know. But yeah, 4 out of 5 is still flipping good.
Well, I'm gonna literally just give my rating now because you gave the same rating as me with literally the same reasoning. I mean, obviously you've got some amazing musicianship. You have basically, even from the intro, A Tragic Tale of a Spirit's Creation. You hear all the piano, you hear the blaring sirens in the background with the atmospheres, and then attached of her spirit's possession just comes in like a wall of sound. That being said, I feel like the low end, especially on the kick, could have probably have been brought out a little bit. I think these tracks have a lot of stuff to them. I've listened to this album probably more than most of the South African metal releases because it's got so much stuff to try wrap my mind around. But I mean, the vocals, like, I really can't fault it. I think that mid to high range it's phenomenal. I mean, it's almost hard to believe that this is a South African band on the face of it. I just wish that double bass kick could have been brought out a little bit more, and there could have been a little bit more pressure instead of it giving off that dissonant lo-fi feel, which I don't feel like is what they were actually going for. So yeah, with that in mind, I mean, musicianship is just like 100%, you know, it's just final production based upon the contents of the music. Like, just gonna have to shave off a point for that, but still, four from me and 4 from you. That's a solid 8 out of 10 for Spectral Realm, Spectral Witch of Hex River. So big ups, guys. That's some quality stuff. Right, so we are almost at like just over the halfway point, and we're jumping right over to Durban here with another full release album, and it is Empire of Illusion by Imperious Vision, the debut release from these Durban Blackened Death, brutal tech death hybrid band. So yeah, I guess I can kind of kick it off. You have basically an 8-track wall of sound, produced all in-house by themselves, and yeah, after a pretty, I would say like pretty standard type of intro, ominous looming atmospheric sounds, it blasts right into Taros, which is one of their new singles, and it's just basically a wall of sound that just is completely enhanced by Nick's vocals that come in. It's funny, when I first heard this band, there was, and I'll like delve, like sidetrack a little bit here with a story. In 1998, I was working at the Look and Listen. Back then, it was called the Max Mega Store, and I was working in the rock and pop department. And one of the girls, Louise, that worked there, introduced me to a band along with the Emperors and the Demus, the Satyricons and the Cradles and whatnot. She introduced me to a band called Withered Beauty. And it's a band that's relatively unknown. They never did anything more than this one album on Nuclear Blast in 1998, kind of a melodic, classified as a melodic death band, and they're from Sweden. And the moment I heard Imperious Vision, I thought, wow, Jesus Christ, this is like Withered Beauty reincarnate. They have that brutal death metal sound, but with that almost Swedish melodic death tone to the guitar, and it's like, it's dense, it's chunky. The layering on Nick's vocals is second to none. Genocide, Suicide, and Ignatius are like old school Morbid Angel versus Suffocation levels of brutality. And then, like, obviously Before the Dawn, if it's a little bit more of a melodic is spin, but still dense on the low end. And honestly, I would argue probably one of my favorite releases to come out in the whole of 2020, not just in South Africa, but like in the world. It is one hell of a debut release. And obviously it ends off with Empire of Illusion, title track, pummeling drums, ending before like some nice like melodic riffage to kind of end off and just give you a small breather. And yeah, just I can't fault this release. I'm just saying it here. It gets 5 out of 5 from me, and uncompromised. And yeah, fight me if you don't like my review. Fight me on it. I don't care. So
yeah. So from my side, I'm going to give them 4. So they get like a solid 9, which is flipping great. You know, they slammy tech death goodness. It's got killer production for a self-produced album. I was actually discussing it with Lyle earlier, where I said that it had a very similar, like thought that it was actually Fallen Prophets at a stage. And I was like, did I click the wrong thing? You know, like I'm supposed to be reviewing this Imperious Visions. And I went and checked. I was like, no, it's Imperious Vision. So like super solid first release. My favorite track is Ignatius. It's pummeling. It's heavy. So the only reason I'm deducting a point is occasionally I found the drums had the sprinkler effect, Now I know that Bryn plays the drums in this. It's more a case of, I think, the sample that he used, because he records it on an electric kit, and on that bass kick, for some reason sometimes it just had that sprinkler effect, and that's the thing that I use to describe that sort of style of drums. But yeah, like, that's the only reason I'm deducting the point, is it was still obviously playable, seeing as though the guy is playing the stuff, you know. But yeah, that's my only drawback. And yeah, I think they should be very proud of themselves for like a debut album. Man, this is killer.
So big ups to the guys that get a solid 9 out of 10. So Durban representing the tech death goodness. Right, so now we're jumping ahead all the way back to Joburg, and now we're by August already, 14th of August, and this will be another band that you can't be impartial with. This is an Incarnate Deity with Theodicy. Now, I was obviously a little bit like in two minds because of the whole Christian etymology around it. But again, looking at it impartially and not looking at the lyrical depth of it, I would say I would phonic Death album. It offers a little bit of black elements also, has a nice little symphonic intro, and then drops into Plague Bearer, which is like just a chunky mid-tempo, like nice mid-range leveled track, nice choir elements in the middle, lots of breakdowns. It offers like a lot of groove kind of moving forward. Valley of Bones kind of specifically, it picks up the pace. The melodic riffs kind of become a lot more frenetic, and then obviously trying to complement it with some groovy drum work to kind of complement the crazy pace of the guitars. I would say Legionnaire of Degradation, that probably is one of my favorite, but just because it offers a lot more of a tech death element, even with like the dramatic blast beats and the more like erratic time signature changes in it. Also, yeah, No Quarter with the tiny little bass break in it. That was quite a little nifty treat, and that all kind of is meshed together with like a healthy dose of choir background that doesn't feel over-contrived or programmed. It feels very organic, but not so much in the front that you feel like it's there in your face. Finis Noctis, it ends the album on a nice like black metal note, starting mid-tempo, jumping between the fast and slow rhythms a lot, and just having a nice like atmospheric like element in it. I feel like this album, even though it would be considered to be like a melodic or symphonic Black and Death, it kind of even has like more groove elements than any of the other bands that we've actually reviewed. That being said, I do feel like a couple of the time signature changes that fell in the earlier parts of the signals kind of took me out of the rhythm that was being brought on by me, that like brought on throughout the track. So, I mean, again, 8 tracks where I liked 5 out of the 8, like without any qualm. So I'm gonna give this a solid. Yeah, I had this down for a solid 3 out of 5, which would be a 6 out of. And obviously, I probably took a point off him, like just subconsciously because of the lyricism. But again, otherwise it would be like a solid 7, like 7 out of 10. But yeah, as far as it goes, 6 out of 10.
Cool. No, that's good.
Yeah, musically is killer. I can't wait to actually hear what the project actually comes up with in the future. So, yeah, okay, we're gonna actually jump over towards the end of the August month, and we're going with Overthrust and their single Demon Grave. So maybe you want to actually kick us off with that.
Yeah, this was actually probably my favorite single of the bunch that we're going to review. It's raw, live sounding death metal. It sounds like they're performing it in my head when I'm listening with headphones. It's well produced, but it still has that raw live quality. I really enjoy the vocals. You can hear that there's a lot of effort and energy being poured into this single. And yeah, like it's miles ahead in production of its last EP. So I hope they can sort of keep that up going forward, like when they do their album or next EP. But yeah, this killer track. Think I'm going to give it a 4. Yeah, it's like I said, it's solid. Like I just want more of it. That's the only reason I'm deducting a point.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has a lot of visceral rage. It feels very raw, but I mean, it literally was a live recording done at Milestone Studios, so it has all the grit there. Miles ahead of their previous EP, music-wise. That being said, I still feel like the production could be better if given a little bit more time on post-production. I believe like this could be literally like the second coming of Morbid Angel type brutal, because they have that type of visceral rage to them. I mean, but as far as the leveling and all the sounds, it's all there, it's all in place. I have no problem with it. It's a killer, catchy, hookish track that I know crushes the mosh pits. So yeah, for that reason, I'm going to give it 3.5 out of 5. So that gives him what? 7.5.
Yeah, super solid.
7.5 to Vulture and the crew up in Botswana. Keep rocking, guys. So yeah, okay, cool. We're jumping back over to Durban. We just spoke to these guys recently. We have Truth Decayed with their second single, Opposing Direction, which was pretty much a sophomore release after their first raw single. So I guess I'll kick it off. Kind of a thrashy element, but actually more groove laden, with kind of an old school dual guitar sensibility. So Rainer kind of brings that, like, you feel like the anguish in his voice, like, because he has that mid to high range type yell effect. You can make out all the lyrics. The guitars are pretty well layered. I think the drum rhythm is fine. It goes kind of with the groove element, and they even let the bass kind of shine. That being said, my one little peeve of it, and it's like a weird type of like quabble with it. It's kind of like, I just wish it had one more layer of something to it to give it a little bit more on the low end, because it feels almost like I don't want to say like a demo version, but it kind of has that raw analog feel, but without that polish to like production, making it sound all sparkly. So again, looking at it as an evolution from their previous single, so it's leaps and bounds, but still knowing that the band is new and they've got a lot more coming up in the future, I'm going to give these guys 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5.
Not bad.
For An Opposing Direction.
Yeah, so I'm going to start just with the review. Music is a complete blend of thrash, groove, and old school sort of heavy metal. Like when I listened to it, I could pick up elements of, a little bit of Slayer, a little bit of Pantera, and a sprinkling of Judas Priest. The production is a little lackluster. It's good, but it's, like you mentioned it, it's like missing that gold dust sprinkled on top. The solo for it is pretty cool. Where I feel the song falls short is vocally, but that's just basically a matter of taste. I'm not a massive fan of these style thrash vocals. The sort of shouty, I can sort of get behind Pantera and Slayer, but this to me just didn't, vocally it didn't do it for me. And I mean, that's just a taste thing. So from my side, I'm going to give this 2.5, which means they still get a solid 5.5 out of 10. So, I mean, it's a good, man. They must just keep going and improve where they need to improve. And I mean, they don't have to change their vocal style. That's not what I'm saying. It's just my taste.
We've seen many bands like Overkill, and even to a certain extent, like the likes of Anthrax and stuff, do vocals like that, the more telling you type lyrics. So it's fine. Again, hard to kind of judge when it's so little music, you know. So again, just another band. We're going to wait and look out for new material in the near future. So we can't wait. But yeah, let's keep that thrash vibe going, and we're going to be coming all the way back to Cape Town with the full release album that came out over Halloween, 31st of October. It's Abaddon, Rise of Terror. So yeah, Alec, maybe you want to kick us off with this.
Yeah, the production in this was pretty good. There was the occasional like weird like tone on the double bass in some sections, like especially like the faster sections. Not quite the sprinkler effect, but yeah, like some weird tone there. But yeah, not, like I said, not as bad as the Bleeding Spawn sprinkler effect. Song from a composition thing, like I like variance. And to me, a lot of the songs seemed very similar in pacing. Like one song was the next song was the next song. And there was nothing really that I could stands out as a favorite track, because they were all so similar. And I mean, they're obviously going for a certain style, which means they're nailing it, you know. But to me, it was a little bit too similar. There were occasionally times where I was like, that's a weird vocal pattern. Specifically, like, I think they start off their album on their title track with Rise of Terror. And when the vocals kicked in, I was like, is that really how you want to start your album, you know? But overall, it's a good, solid release, and it deserves a 3 out of 5 in my book.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, like you said, Rise of Terror kind of kicks off with a scream from Vian. The first off the bat, like after you hear the dual guitar and that kind of that standard Abaddon, like black and thrashy sound, you can hear there's definitely, as the album moves along, a lot more refinement to Vian's lyrics, showing a lot more vocal dexterity, number one. And also, even in certain like lyrical parts, he kind of adds in a little bit more. Yeah, you would almost consider it like, wouldn't expect those lyrics to be fitted in there, but when you read the lyrics and it makes actually sense, it's almost like a conceptual effort each song as far as the lyricism goes. So yeah, I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I mean, like the first 3 or 4 tracks being Rise of Terror, Demon, Lost Acquisition, and The One-Eyed Witch all have a similar mid-tempo range. Not to say that they are not good tracks, because they all actually offer a lot of catchy riffs. If there's one thing I can give a lot of credit for on this album, there are a lot of catchy bits on this album. So I would say before Nocturnus, it's definitely the darkest track. Has a more palm muted, dissonant feel, and kind of has a bit more of that explosive thrash element that comes in after a lot of silence. It's kind of, I feel it's one of the things that Abaddon have been able to pull off better than others. It's a controlled rage that kind of explodes, and that track in particular kind of stood out to me. Skip ahead. Fuck Humanity is probably my favorite track actually on the album, ironically enough. It's just a meat and potato thrash fury track, hooks for days, catchy, like sweeps, nice fills, like coming in on the drums on every loop change. It's like just a quality track. And then Extinction Solution ending off on an instrumental note. Can't really go wrong with that. That being said, it's better than their previous album. I still think they can kill it and go even further. I feel now that Daniel's also part of the band, this is just going to bounce off from the Hulver influence, and then hopefully the Abaddon influence will feed into the Hulver influence. So with all that in mind, I'm giving this 3.5 out of 5. So a solid 6.5 out of 10 to the Somerset West boys. So bringing the thrash, guys. Nice one. Nice one. Right. So now we're all the way into November. Actually, correction, we are not. We had a double release that came out over Halloween. We in fact had the debut release from Joburg-based extreme metal band Nameless Dread, and their debut album, The First Nothing. So, yeah, I guess maybe I'll kick this off. Joburg band, kind of can't really put your finger on what genre they really are. They have a lot of mellow death. They have a lot of groove metal, a lot of like death metal, especially along like some of the vocal deliveries. It's a 7-track album. It kind of, the Great Unclean kind of gives you an immediate idea of the vocal tone going forward with the album. Big death metal chugs going along, some manic drums, pummeling, and almost like feel like that wall of sound effect again when you're getting hit by it. I would say Enter Chaos and Rot With Me. It balances the death and the melodic elements a little bit better than some of their other tracks, because it breathes a little bit more than some of the frenetic parts that they have in some other tracks, like When God Blinks, especially like in the mid-tempo range, that tends to just be almost like too dense to comprehend. So the groove-laden hooks that they do on those tracks definitely helps. I mean, at first impression, when I hear this band, I get a very almost Cataclysm type feel, or even more so like a Sepultura, but modern day Sepultura feel, like real powerful guitars and like really like forward vocals. And I mean, the bass, I would say probably my one peeve with the album, even though it is a like a whole DIY project, I feel like the drums could have been brought out a little bit further out into the mix. The bass guitar, not so much a big deal. You can tell it's there, but especially on tracks like The Resurrectionists and The Cold, both end kind of, I don't know, the drumming on it, I feel like could have been brought out a little bit more and given it a little bit more of a rounded feel on the bottom end. That being said, I can't really fault them too much. It definitely caught my attention. Kind of came out of nowhere, and I was like, whoa, okay. So, I mean, with that in mind, fantastic debut release. Couldn't really... I would give it a solid 5 if it wasn't for the production on the low end. So with that in mind, I'm going to give it a solid 4 out of 5 for their debut album, The First Nothing.
Sick. I'm going to start off with my review score. I'm going to give them 3.5. It's not quite like from a composition standpoint, it's not quite Spectral realm, and they also suffer the same sort of production faults. So yeah, 3.5, which with your 4 gives them 7.5 out of 10, which is killer.
Solid B. Solid B plus for a debut album.
Yeah. I think you actually nailed it, because I've always sort of put them in the box of death metal, which is what Cataclysm is classified as. And these guys, to me, have a very similar sort of ethos to Cataclysm. There's one guitarist live, but they still record with 2 guitarists, So yeah, they're very similar to Cataclysm in that sort of sense. They probably have similar tunings as well. Production's great for the fact that it's self-produced. Like, I can't fault them there. And I think they even did like reamping through analog amps and all that spiel. So like the drums are played on an electric kit. There's a great variation in their composition, like it's not 140 or 160 throughout. It's some proper different sounding songs. The MVP of this band is definitely the vocals though. Like, vocally, this band is one of my favorite of all the releases we're going to review. It's just so good in terms of like that death metal sound, and it's right up my alley. So yeah, like, killer for a first release, and I can't wait to see what these guys do going forward.
Oh yeah. So big ups to the Joburg guys. We're going to be jumping over back to PE, and we have another one-man band that we need to review. We have the Dead Man Risen single, Sadistic Anomaly, which was released on the 18th of November. So, yeah, do you want to actually maybe kick us off with that?
Yeah, so this is another sort of savant-level musician who's very modest but very focused on his music. He always churns out releases after release, and it's always quality. His production's pretty good on this, though there seemed to be something weird with the kick drum. Maybe I'm just having a bad day for kick drums, but like there was something up. I can't really place my finger on it, other than it was like it sounded very like lackluster. It didn't have the oomph, it didn't have the power. It was just it was like me punching my leg, basically, but like I said, the composition is spot on. There's some really great grooves. There's like a break where it's drums and vocals, which is also super cool. And the ooh in the chorus after the sort of sadistic anomaly, ooh, is super cool. And it's like super catchy. It's something like I can actually remember. And I've listened to a ton of music while working today. So like if I can pick that up, it's doing its job, because it's something that's catching my attention and keeping it. So from a single, the only thing I can really fault is that kick drum. And so I'm going to give it 4 out of 5.
Yep. Well, yeah, let me actually just give my review quick. So yeah, pretty much what you said was my main quibble with it was almost that tom snare ballads. It felt very well. It's not that it didn't feel real. It just felt like a little bit too viscerally in your face. That being said, I mean, the track's made up of 2 or 3 riffs, with the vocals literally sitting like perfectly in their place. Every little hook is enough for you to remember, and you can almost like hum it. I mean, I've very seldom find fault in anything that Dead Man Risen really puts out. He's really a talented musician. The only thing that's always been the overlying issue is getting that final little drum sound to sound like a perfect drum. You know, so with that in mind, it was literally mirroring what you were saying, and I'll mirror it even to the rating point. I'm going to give Sadistic Anomaly a solid 4 out of 5. So put that together, it's a solid A. 8 out of 10 for Sadistic Anomaly. So big ups to Sean. Keep it rocking, man. Can't wait to hear the new album next year. Right. So, right. We had this guy a couple of weeks ago as a guest. Luandile was on, and now his EP for Cryoplegia is finally out. The Biological Harvest was released 4th of December. And yeah, perhaps you actually want to kick this off because you were actually quite interested in getting into it.
Yeah, this nails the slam sound, but like it's stereotypically slam while it's not at the same time. And what I mean by that is Luandile is a great guitarist, and he's introduced some interesting techniques like the double thumb from Tosinabasi. He's got a lot of like really cool solo parts in it, but production wise, spot on. He nails the sort of slam sound. Vocally, such a lot of range, such a lot of cool slam sounding effects. Yeah, I really like the little interesting tech death / progressive death elements. Yeah, and the fact that he did literally everything except for the artwork in-house, killer. Yeah, so I'm going to give him a 4.5 out of 5.
Oh yeah, badass debut release, a 5-track EP. I'd say the first 2 tracks give literally that balance between like slam and even to a certain extent deathcore. I know he does identify with that, and some of the detuned guitars definitely suit that low guttural. So for Harvest and Black, definitely more the slamming deathcore route. I feel like Seeds of Domination has a little bit more of a tech death feel. Weird little guitar picks and licks mixed with some odd little drum fills that he puts in, but still, again, like meat and potatoes slamming deathcore at the point of it. So Sovereign Reign, a little bit more obscure with some weird slap type guitars in it. Probably my favorite track off the EP. And then Ophelia featuring Stevie Boyser, yeah, it's definitely a more dissonant tech death route, that like going one step further from what track 3 was and actually just going full tilt. But more so over just being able to showcase his technical ability as a vocalist. Luandile hit it out the park here for me. So yeah, I'm gonna give us also a solid 4.5 out of 5, uncompromised.
Yeah, 6. So that's a 9 out of 10, which is very good score. So good job, yeah. Cryoplegia.
Yep. And now going all the way from slamming vibes, we're jumping over to Bloemfontein for our one review that we actually get to do. And I'm very excited about actually doing this. This is the Unblessed Divine debut EP, The Coming Darkness. Basically, it was a 4-track EP. The first track that we had previewed a few months ago was The Glowing Darkness, kind of a hybrid between Black and Death and industrial. And when you hear the 4-track EP, you hear Exalted One, and the moment that track starts, you hear the synthetic, followed 10 seconds later by a wall of sound and probably some of the best death metal vocals I've heard in years. Now, I must confess, I am a little bit biased. I've been a fan of Lee Vollenschlager's vocals since he came on and did the 13th Beast release with Malevolent Creation. In my opinion, that album marked probably one of the greatest returns from one of the OG, like, like purveyors like with that, and he just brought that vocal delivery and that aggression and those chunky riffs across the entire EP to the point that when it got to Reborn Enlightenment, I was literally like, it didn't surprise me at all when they chose that to be the single for the EP. It's got that massive pad that comes in over the chorus with Rian's double bass drumming, and it is just such a mega wall of sound. It is so epic, and the whole EP is ended off with Michal doing a bit of an atmospheric symphonic outro, and I literally envision these types of interludes across their whole live set or across their whole next forthcoming album. So I love it. This is probably one of my favorite releases to actually come out, even though it's 4 tracks. Again, I would have given it a solid 5 had that outro, that last track, been about 3 or 4 minutes longer. So for that reason, I'm giving it a solid 4.5 out of 5.
Cool. So I always try remain impartial. So, like you said, vocally it was killer. From a drum perspective, it was also killer, and like there's some really interesting guitar riffs going on. I did find that from a production standpoint, a lot of the time the keys and synths were like extremely overpowering to the point where like they drowned out a lot of the guitar. They were in that same register as the guitar and the vocals. So the keys and synth need to be mixed in such a way that there's still the power from the guitars and the vocals. There were sections where like the keys and synths faded in or faded out, and it was like, oh shit, there's like some like heavy music here with some heavy substance. My sort of only gripe is that we're sitting in 2020, and like, is Satanism really the cool thing for metal these days? And it has nothing to do with beliefs, because like whatever, like sing about whatever you want, but like you're kind of beating a dead horse to me. And I mean, it's from Bloemfontein, which like I've played there quite a lot, and there is that sort of mentality that you're either conservative or you're a Satanist metal band. So like, to me, it's unfortunate because it's like a stereotype, you know. And I think metal should be about breaking sort of stereotypes. Like, I don't know. From my side, it's literally just, that's the only thing I can fault them on, is like the edgelord factor. That and the combination of the keys and the synths, I'm going to have to give them a 3. So still solid. I mean, if you add your 4.5 to my 3, then they get 7.5 out of 10, which is solid.
For a debut release of 4 tracks, of which only 3 are actually tracks, you know? Not bad. So, yeah, we're actually about to reach the last one, and I guess I'll be dealing with this first. We just had this release last week, and it is the Fallen Prophets No End in Sight EP, released 11th of December. Well, I mean, basically, in my opinion, if there was anything that I was faulting during the Relentless killing motivation, they pretty much went and eradicated any of those worries moving in onto this EP. I mean, if Benighted and Aborted had to have a baby, it would be the Fallen Prophets. They are literally, from production level, from what Heinrich at Burning Tone did on the production of the tracks to the actual tracks themselves, to all the little guest solos that they've had, from like Ivan Mituk, where he adds that bluesy-ish guitar swing to Believe. And then you have like Dead But Still Alive with Chris Anopoulos. So he kind of adds that almost like erratic tech death, like guitar soloing. I mean, I would say lyrically, vocally, and audibly wise, Peter has never sounded better. He sounds literally like a demon on this. And again, yeah, hooks for days. I mean, this goes one step beyond what Relentless did, and even on the artwork for the EP, like same designer, Alberto Filipponi, literally went to the whole next level on this new EP artwork. So I think I gave a big badass rating earlier for a band, but these guys, based upon how much blood, sweat, and tears they put in during the whole lockdown to get this out during lockdown, recorded during pretty tough conditions, mega collabs, sick production, amazing artwork that I want to have on a t-shirt. I'm going to give it a solid 5 out of 5.
Sick. Yeah, no, this was a solid release, and I think, like you said, they did improve from Relentless Killing Motivation. Fast vocals and patches, you know, some really interesting patterns. I looked on the stream and I actually had some level of agreement, and I know the Fallen Prophet guys are not gonna be too happy when I say this, but there was some deathcore sounding elements to it. And before they take that as an insult, to me, deathcore is the genre of music that is actually stretching what's done vocally. And so when I say that there's some deathcore elements, it's because Peter is stretching what he's doing vocally. So don't take it as an insult. There's some really great black metal feeling stuff in their song Believe. Overall, this sort of reminds me of a Scottish death metal band called Man Must Die, which has a phenomenal vocalist. And then it has like the modern death metal sensibilities of a band that has a mouthful of a name called Success Will Write Apocalypse Across the Sky, which is to me, one of the top like modern death metal bands that like no one's ever heard of.
Well, we'll put a link up for people to check it for the stream.
Yeah. It is one of my favorite EPs. The only criticism I can sort of point out, and comes back to like almost like the deathcore side of things, is in the no end in sight. Before the breakdown, there's a bit of like a vocal call out where Peter does almost like a I don't know, like a yelly call out breakdown line, and I was like, your whole album is so heavy, and now you've like added this like this weakish line that almost belongs in like a struggling voice of a metalcore musician, you know, like prior to the breakdown. And I was like, oh my goodness, this album would be like, this EP would be like killing it if it wasn't for that one little part, you know. Other than that, I did find like they had an interesting use of some samples and like quotes and whatnot. But whenever you do that, you need to be very careful of the audience being able to actually hear the samples, especially if it's like a spoken word thing, you know, like if it's like a quote from a movie or whatnot, then it doesn't help if it's beneath layers and layers of things that you can't actually hear. While the production and everything has improved from the album, I'm actually going to give this a lower score than what I gave him for their album. And I'm going to give it a 4. So like, still like 9 out of 10, guys. It's killer.
An improvement from the last album, no doubt. So, Yeah, yeah. Big ups to the Cape Town boys. We started off with the Fallen Prophets and we ended on the Fallen Prophets. So yeah, and with that, yeah, Alec, we're ending off year 2020, a crazy year in human history, a crazy year for SA metal. I'm curious to see what the future holds for SA extreme metal. So yeah, any final passing thoughts your side?
I think we've been quite nice and quite generous today in terms of the time we spent, but also like maybe we weren't as critical as we should have been, and maybe some bands feel like we were more critical than we should have been. So just remember, everybody, these are like literally opinions. Please feel free to write hate speech all over the channel. It's no like, it doesn't really affect me, and it won't really affect Lyle. Just remember that these are just our opinions. So congratulations to everyone that actually released something, because like actually having a score on the board is better than not producing anything. So take our feedback, ignore our feedback, do what you want. And yeah, can't wait to see what every one of these bands actually releases going forward. So congrats, guys.
Yeah, definitely. So salute to everybody that punched in. This has not been an easy year to be motivated as an artist. So I mean, from the 20 fantastic releases, and they really are all fantastic releases in their own right. If anything, it just shows this high level of music that's coming out of this country, and I can't wait to hear what killer music comes out here in the next year or so. But yeah, I guess we're gonna wrap that up for a day, a month, a year. We will be taking a few weeks break. We will be back middle of January, probably around the 17th of January. We're planning on bringing in a few interesting guests. Got a lot more local bands and a couple of international guests that we're planning on bringing in. So again, we didn't think that this lockdown would be going on for months on end, but as long as this lockdown's going, we'll keep going. But in the meantime, Alec and me, we need a break. It's been a long year. It's time to chill and hang out with our family and friends and, you know, appreciate our time off. So we hope you guys do the same. We appreciate you guys tuning in all these weeks. We thank all the awesome bands and guests we've had on over these last few weeks. It's been really fun getting to know peeps and, you know, just showcasing killer African and South African metal. So yeah, we'll be back in 2021. We hope you guys will join us. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe this video and subscribe to our channel so you're up to date on all the new music that's coming out. And yeah, we will check you guys in the new year. Keep safe, guys. Happy New Year's. Happy holidays. See you next year.
Peace.